Welcome back to the Sparks by Ignium podcast. I am Phil Rose, I'm the host, and today I'm delighted to announce this is our 100th episode. We started this show back in 2019 and really got going in 2020. So over the last 5 years, we've had an amazing opportunity to speak to some amazing guests. I've learned so much myself, and I hope you, the listener, has done too. It's been an amazing journey just to think about all those people that I've talked to. If I think back to January 2020, before the COVID pandemic started, we were all blissfully unaware of what was about to appear 3 months later, or even 2 months later. Thinking about that, we had some great conversations at that time, thinking about what the world was going to be like in 2020. We recorded some shows which we just said were our predictions for 2020. We called it With Hindsight 2020 and 2020 Vision. But actually, when you look back on it, how wrong we were. We couldn't predict the future, much like nobody can predict the future now. In the uncertain times in which we exist at this very moment, there is so much going on that we cannot control. And one of the big things that I wanted to talk about today was very much around what's come up over the last 5 years. For me as a podcast host, think about some of the amazing guests that I've talked to. One of the big things actually sits around how we as leaders have to show up in a different way. We have to show up authentically with our own selves to be this voice of what's going on in that business, our business. But actually, we don't know the answers. So sometimes we have our own fears, our own scaredness going on. But we just don't know what we can do. But we have to portray that message. So I just want you to reflect as I talk now for the next 20, 30 minutes, thinking about what we've done as a business and how we've evolved. Thinking about what that says to you as your business. Now, I want to do this review in two parts. The first part takes me up to the end of 2021, thinking about those first 2 years of the podcast. We recorded almost 45 shows in that time, putting out as many as we could. Obviously, the pandemic helped us because we had lots of guests who were very willing to talk to us. We reached out through Zoom and Teams to have conversations. And then the next show I'm going to put out will be thinking us through 2022 and 23 and 24, thinking about what they brought for us. But let's just think back. 2020, what was it like? Hey, we all remember those days sitting, working from home, the kids running around, the dog, the wife, the cat, the dog, the partners, all of those things. For me, I really enjoyed it. I was very lucky. My family was back home together. And actually, we had a chance to be together. It was difficult for us because of what was going on with schooling. But do you know what? We made it work. We came closer together as a family. Now, it also created its own issues, and I bend my heart out to any of those who are out there today who also had those issues, because actually lockdown put a lot of toll, a big toll, I should say, on many people. It impacted our children in very different ways, thinking about the things they could control and things they couldn't control. Thinking about them, in my daughter's case, the young teenager going into lockdown at 2020, she was only 14 to 15. And that's a big issue for a lot of people. But what I do think is how we then went through that next 2 years, that development piece, helping build, helping educate, helping work together. We learned to become closer as a family. And I look back on some of the podcasts we did at that time. We all talked about being stronger together. In fact, some of our WhatsApp groups between me and many of the other coaches were all about being stronger together, providing that support. We used to meet up online, having our conversations about supporting each other. And I think that's what we did as a family as well, being able to support each other in those times. But let's come back to the podcast itself. There were a number of threads that I saw running through this time. And those threads, I think, is something I want to talk about today. Because to me, that the podcast has evolved. When we set out this podcast back in 2019, I had a vision of a marketing tool. We were going to do this to market what we were doing, to build a business. But what I realized over that pandemic time was that actually that wasn't the purpose of this podcast. The purpose was about providing information, providing education, providing a bit of stability to some people when they've got something coming in regularly. I saw it as a way of really communicating with lots of other people about the way they run things, the way they do their business. And if I think about the guests we had, I purposely worked with them to look at who would be an appropriate guest. Now, in the beginning, maybe some of those guests didn't fit into that same line, but we had great conversations, thinking about leadership, thinking about purpose, thinking about the environment, thinking about sustainability and governance, thinking about allyship, thinking about DEI and how that impacted our businesses. And the common thread, I think, was this word purpose, because actually that's what transformed the podcast from something which I saw as a marketing tool originally to something which I saw as an educational informing tool. Because actually, the marketing is all about producing a return. And if I think about the return that we've got from it, and you've got from it as listeners, I think that return is more about the learnings you can take from it. I urge everybody, and I say this at the beginning of every show, I can't hold you to account for your learning. But I really urge you to do your own learning, to think about what you're building in your business, think about what you're building in your life. Because you can't separate life from business and business from life. It's about integration. And I think this is one of the things that really strikes me looking back with 5 years hindsight. We set out to be marketing, but actually what we've ended up being is building something where we're building community. Those people who listen to the podcast, engage with me, talk to me, and send me information. And it's more about them and what they're taking from it. And to me, that's the reason I do this now. Yes, should we be making money from it? Maybe, but that's not the intent. The purpose is to guide this message of purpose, to be that standout person in the field, to say, this is the journey we're going on. And we'd love you to go on that journey with us. So my ambition is to continue this podcast for the next 100 episodes and thinking about where we can take it, think about the guests we can bring on board. Because I believe there's so many more people out there, be them authors or business owners, who have been on a journey that's helped them develop over time. And I think that's the key point. It's about helping other people develop. That's what this podcast is about. My purpose in life is very much around the word to inspire. And I think about inspiring people, inspiring them to step up and do things differently. I told the story on a podcast some time ago, and I've told it many times since, that when I first looked at this word purpose for me, word of purpose, I came up with the word help, or to help to be precise. And I worked with a lovely lady called Suki, and she helped me understand what my purpose was. And she used the word help. But then I realized that wasn't what I was about, because that was about me helping people. But I've realized over time as a coach, that's not my job. My job is actually to give you tools so you can help yourselves. All I can do is lead you to water. I can't make you drink. But actually, what I have is tools. I have a toolkit. And I say in my coaching world, I have this coaching toolkit and a consulting toolkit. The consulting toolkit is full of the tools I've learned over the last 22 years of being in business. And in fact, if I think about it, it's been longer than that since I started my work, when 1993, when I started at Rolls-Royce. So I've got this great toolkit. I've been there, I've done it. No, have I been and run lots of little businesses? No, I haven't. But I've worked with hundreds of businesses since 2004, where I've been in there. I've seen so many people. I've coached them. I've trained them. I've facilitated with them. I've been part of their teams. I've run team builds. And I've learned the skills that go into this toolkit to help you. And then equally, my coaching toolkit has developed over as well. Since 2008, when I started coaching, I've been learning how to be a better coach. And that's what helped me transform this word to help, to inspire. Because I believe to inspire is actually more important. I picked this up when I was first running one of my London marathons in fancy dress. In fact, I had a conversation with Erica Robinson, one of my later guests, about my marathon running recently. But my point is, I was running around London and I realized I wasn't helping. And the reason I say that is because as a runner, yes, I was helping put money in the charities' coffers because that's what I was out there to do. But what I realized, the more fun thing for me, and this is me personally, I was dressed in my fancy dress costumes. And actually it was that word to inspire. I was here to inspire people to pick up and do things differently. In fact, if I go back to 2012, when I tried to get involved in the 2012 Olympics, that was my driving point to that. I was working with an organisation called Willpower in Stoke Mandeville, and they were about providing wheelchairs for disabled athletes, in fact, disabled people, to get out of bed and develop their lives. And I believe that was about inspiring people to take a different mindset. So I transformed my purpose from the word to help to simply to inspire. Because as I ran around the streets of London on one of my many London marathons in fancy dress, I realized the smiles I could put on kids' faces or adults' faces, I would inspire them to do things differently. If I could do it, they could do it. And I still believe that's the case. Anything I can do, you can do just as well, if not better. And that's why to inspire is key. I want to inspire business owners. I want to inspire people with this podcast. I want to inspire people to also pick up and think where they could be in the next 5 years with their podcast or their marketing. Or in my case, it's not about marketing now, it's just about communicating a message, doing it because I believe in it passionately. And that's what inspiration does. I would love you to be inspired by what we talk about, by the guests we have on the show, because I believe they are the things that drive this podcast. They're the reasons we do what we do. So let's go back to what I was saying here. It was all about inspiring. So when I come back to inspiring, that's what this podcast is for. And the journey from 2020 through to 2021, we drove on a couple of different threads with purpose at the core. I mentioned about ESG. I remember talking to the late Robert Barnard Weston. We talked about purpose and how he built some of the first farmers markets in the UK. But what he also did was inspire people to think about business in a different way. We often talk about the triple bottom line, but his view was very much around the environment and sustainability. Why do we have to destroy what we're doing to build a business? We build that commercial and cultural aspects. We build purpose at the core of every business. And I love talking to Robert. And if I could go back in time and have more conversations with him, I'd love to do that because there were so many things I pulled out of his podcast at that point. So I'd urge you to go listen to what Robert Barnard Weston said about how you can build purpose into your business, how you can build sustainability, and how you can have conversations with your teams that really start driving that. And then I think about the conversations I had with Julie Kratz. Julie and I talked a lot about how to build DEI into businesses, because to me, this was the key thing. It was about building something that people could really be part of. Now, the world's been on a different journey over the last few months to years. But in that case there, Julie really emphasized what allyship meant and how we could build that into the discussions about culture. And I do wonder, how can you build that into your purpose? Because actually, DEI is about recognizing the individual, recognizing people for their talents uniquely that they can bring to the teams. So, what is it you can do in terms of building your teams around an inclusive culture? Now, it doesn't mean you employ people who haven't got the skills to do the job. It means you employ the right people. But you don't look at their color or their race or their gender. You look at their ability to do the role. And then you look at developing them in your business and your teams and your community. Because remember, the purpose at the core piece is how can we build better communities around our businesses? So Julie had a lot to say there. And I love talking to Julie because when she talked, she had such a passion for building allyship in that business, in her business, in her work, in how she helped corporate America change. Moving on, though, thinking about some of the themes we then talked about was the leadership. And again, Julie and Robert both led to this. How does leadership as a service really help? Because what I saw in Robert and Julie was the ability to be this servant leader, to be out there leading from behind, pushing people forwards, helping people really understand what it meant for them to be inclusive in their businesses. And I think about the conversation I had with Michael Tanner. We talked about the leadership there, about the vantage point you could gain by being that servant leadership, tapping into some of the work of Ken Blanchard, which again, if I remind myself, was one of the first business books I ever read back in 1993. And when I think about that, the 1 Minute Manager is so powerful to give people those messages of praise and critique so they can develop. Because without the critique, you can't do anything. And I think that's one of the key things as well. And then thinking through the next few conversations with Demetria Sloan. She's an amazing lady talking about how she was empowering women to get into business and develop their own teams. Because actually, that was the key, thinking about continuous learning for her and what she did there as an individual, building her teams out and helping build conferences and seminars that other people could be part of. So, again, an amazing conversation. We've also had some amazing conversations which give practical advice. And I think this is one of the key things again. I wanted this podcast to be something people could pick up and listen to and go away and do something with. Because actually, if you're not doing something with it mentally or physically, what's the point of doing it? So, from my perspective, that's the key. How do we help you as individuals build something where you can go and do something, be part of it, and feel that you're actually gaining some knowledge? Because I don't want you just to come here passively listening. I would love you to go away with thoughts, with open mind, to be able to put these into your own life and your business, because that again is the key piece here. I think the practical tools we've talked about, if I think about the tools that regularly come up, the tools of Patrick Lencioni, thinking about Working Genius and Five Dysfunctions, the books by Ken Blanchard, if I think about Jim Collins and Good to Great, we've tried to bring those messages out there. And then I come back to the work of Vern Harnish. As you know, I've worked as a coach now for many years, and more recently in the last 5 years, worked alongside Vern Harnish and the team at Scaling Up. Because my belief is actually if we can help scale businesses, there's a powerhouse of the economy. I'd love to get more government messages out there that actually these small businesses drive society, they employ people, and we need to help support those businesses because this scale up community is so powerful. I've been involved in small businesses since I left Rolls-Royce and Volkswagen back in 2001. And I then started joining a small business to understand what that was like. It's tough running a small business. You all know that. But actually, I think a lot of people out there in the government circles don't understand what small businesses do for the economy. They are the powerhouse. They're the ones that really drive it. They're the ones who bring on, employ more people. They're the ones who take risks. They're the ones who put their house on the line. They're the ones who actually go for weeks on end or months on end or years on end without paying themselves because they're paying the other people with a dream, with a vision, moving things forward. Not everybody's successful. The numbers still stack up that not many businesses make it through that first year. But really, with scaling up, is I want to help more and more people get out there, understand the skills and tools they've got that will help them drive their business, because that's the power to really help. If you can build your business, we know we can do this together. So Vern Harnish, when he wrote Scaling Up and Mastering Rockefeller Habits, was very much around creating that. And I love my conversations with Vern. I've talked to Vern many times outside of the podcast, but actually back in the beginning, back in 2001 when we talked, it was about what Vern brought to this. And Vern shared with us his purpose around how he wanted to help make sure business owners could survive. Because he had seen it in his own family where business went bust, where business failed, and the impact it had on family life. So Vern, that really powerful personal message comes through about building purpose and therefore structuring business in the right way. So you have more chance, more opportunity to scale and make money, but also to change society. And this is this culture versus commercial piece to help people build a great business based on people and society. Hey, look, we can make money and we do good with our money. And I think that also leads into the work that I talked about with Daniel Marcos. Daniel, who set up Growth Institute, worked very closely with Vern many years ago and built Growth Institute as a way of educating. So the conversation that we had there was around how can you use this educational process to help you build more into your business so that you understand the process of what training does for you. Because we know that when you start training people, you develop your capability. And we know that underpinning the value of any business is training, because that's about talent, it's about culture, it's about capability. And that's what makes the business successful. So I urge you to go and think about the Vern conversation and the Daniel conversation. The other conversation I'd love to direct you towards is Andre Norman. I met Andre through Scaling Up at a conference in Houston, sorry, not Houston, Dallas even. And Andre and I talked there about how he had found purpose, found life from going from the gangland boss to prison, to finding a way out, educating himself, to realize there was more to life. And his purpose is now about going back into those prison organizations to help people understand there is a better way of running their life. And actually, there's something there, building community, helping people come out of the other side. So Andre's episode was just an immensely powerful piece for me as I understood what he was up to. And I think one of the messages that also comes through is the conversations I had with Jackie Jarvis. Jackie, who wrote a number of different books, but actually more latterly talking about the slow down that she experienced by walking the Camino trails, was actually really powerful for me, because the messages she told were around building time in your life to think differently, to take time, to walk those Caminos. And whether your journey is walking a Camino or whether it's walking your own business. Actually, I just hear my voice now just lowering, because I learned a lot from Jackie around taking time out, experiencing things differently, and actually building culture. And I think it's worth thinking about how that impacts your business. It's not just about working hard, it's about building something else. And sometimes we all need to go on our own path. In fact, we all go on our own path anyway, but too often we try and walk on someone else's path. And what I learned from Jackie is about stepping off that path and walking on someone else's path, and walking that path that had been tread by thousands of other people in many years before. Following that path, but making your own way through it. And I think that's a really powerful message. So over the time, we've had so many different guests, and I can't name them all in this first introduction to the hundreds of episodes. But I'd love you to think about what I've talked about here. There are so many people out there. So please continue to submit questions to us, submit guest opportunities for us. We want to talk to people who really inspire. We want to talk to people who have a message above and beyond just making money. Those who can bring purpose to their businesses are the really valuable ones. And if we can get this message out to governments, to organizations, to those people who really influence small businesses, just think how we can change the world. Because when you combine culture and purpose, you can build a better society. And actually a society where people work together to change what's going on in the world today, to help people become part of something that's bigger and recognize that we can all work together wherever you are, whatever race, whatever gender, whatever creed you are, we can build something. And that's where purpose at the core is really powerful. So my belief over this last 25 minutes is actually I wanted to give you an introduction to actually think about going back through some of the back catalogue of these episodes. Think about what Sparks by Ignium can do in terms of what you can do, who you can talk to, what messages you can take forward, what frameworks you can apply. Because there are so many messages and I can't name them all, but just think through what is it that you want to learn? If you want to take away one thing from me, I'd urge you to download the latest workbook we put on Sparks, the Spark Tank on the website. And that's about the learnings that we take from this podcast. I'm going to upload them there so you can take it away and think about what questions you want to ask yourself. Whether it's, as I said, around community and sustainability, whether it's about DEI and allyship, whether it's about purpose in life, purpose in business. There's so many messages. So have a think about that. Think where you can take it. And again, come back to me to questions. And once again, link this all into your own personal planning, because actually we can plan in business, as we talked about in our scaling up world. The one-page personal plan is so powerful. But in our own lives, the one-page personal plan and the one-page strategic plan go hand in hand. So think about where your life is going. Where do you want to be in the next 5 years? I had no idea where this podcast was going to take me over 5 years. And this last 25 minutes, I've only talked about the first 2 years of it. The next period of time, we're going to talk about the next episodes and what comes out from those. Have a think. Let me know what your thoughts are, and come back to me with any practical questions. And if you do nothing else, please go and do one thing to make your life different. Think about what you might need to start doing, what you need to stop doing, and also what you need to continue doing to get what you want from life and how you can build a better business by building a better community and engaging realistically with purpose at the core. Enjoy this next period of time. Make it work. And I hope to hear from you all as you think about the messages that we're putting out now and how we can go Sparks by Ignium over the next 5 years, of the next 100 episodes that help you develop your business, develop your life, and build a better society that we all feel part of. Thank you. I really appreciate you being part of the community. It's a privilege for me to put these shows out. As I said at the beginning, we did this from a marketing perspective. But 2 years in, we decided actually it's because we really believe in what we're doing. So I'm going to keep doing this. Whether I hear back from people or not, it's personal. Our purpose is to inspire you to step up and make a difference. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the show.